60 degrees Celsius. Not in a furnace. Not on the surface of another planet. Under United Arab Emirates summer conditions, unprotected pavement has been measured at around 60 degrees. Now place that heat beneath the glass towers of downtown Dubai. The sun attacks from above. The pavement radiates heat from below, and humidity begins weakening the one cooling system built into your body, your sweat. Then a second number appears, 40 degrees. But this one is no longer outside you. It is inside your body. Confusion, slurred speech, seizures, coma. Once severe heatstroke begins, the body can climb beyond 41 degrees in only 10 to 15 minutes. And here is the part the brochures do not want you thinking about. The sun is only the first heater. The city built the second one. It is called the urban environment, and after sunset, it keeps cooking. So how did a tourism capital built to escape the desert begin helping the desert heat it? And what happens when a city relies entirely on a machine that can never be allowed to stop? A weather application gives you one number. Your body is being attacked by 5. The air heats you. The sun heats you. The pavement heats you. The glass throws radiation back toward you. And humidity interferes with your only natural escape route. Sweat does not cool you simply by appearing on your skin. It must evaporate into the air. When the air is already loaded with moisture, that escape mechanism becomes fundamentally useless. The thermometer only measures the invisible air. Your body has to survive everything else. Consider a tourist stepping out of an air-conditioned lobby into the midday glare. They believe they are walking into 45-degree heat because that is what their phone screen says. But the physical reality of the street is entirely different. The World Health Organization is explicitly clear that body heat accumulation depends on a combination of air temperature, humidity, thermal radiation from surrounding surfaces, and wind conditions. Perceived temperatures in direct sun can be 10 to 15 degrees higher than shaded conditions. But Dubai is not just a place with strong sunlight. It is a dense forest of highly reflective glass, black asphalt, and thermal mass. When solar radiation hits a mirrored skyscraper, it does not disappear. It is redirected down toward the plaza. When that same energy strikes unprotected pavement, it drives the surface temperature toward that devastating 60-degree mark. The air between these structures becomes a concentrated oven. This creates an immediate and silent crisis for the tourism industry. A city built for international visitors requires walkability. It requires people moving between cafes, retail stores, and entertainment venues. But when the space between buildings becomes physically hostile, the traditional model of urban exploration completely breaks down. You cannot have a vibrant street culture when the street itself is radiating enough thermal energy to cause physical injury. So you have to ask yourself a terrifying question. What happens when the air temperature is only the baseline? Is the heavily engineered urban core actually protecting people from the desert climate, or is it surrounding them with additional, artificial sources of extreme heat? How many different thermal heaters can the human cardiovascular system fight at the exact same time before it simply gives up? The daytime reality is already pushing the limits of human endurance. But the most disturbing part of this thermal trap begins when the sun finally disappears, and the heat does not. A natural desert begins releasing its stored heat immediately after sunset. The sand cools rapidly. The night provides a necessary biological reset, but the concrete, asphalt, and densely packed structures of Dubai have been absorbing massive amounts of solar energy all day long. Then, darkness arrives. The sun switches off. The city does not. A comprehensive 5-year scientific study of Dubai revealed something deeply unsettling: the urban heat island effect, the phenomenon where a city is significantly warmer than its surrounding rural areas, was actually far stronger at night than during the day. During daytime observations, the temperature difference between the urban core and the open desert was around 0.7 degrees, but at night, that difference multiplied. The nighttime urban heat island effect averaged approximately 3.3 degrees, and the problem is aggressively accelerating. A separate 17-year satellite observation study found that the annual nighttime surface heat island intensity was 2.66 degrees, and during the peak summer months, it stood at 2.23 degrees. More alarmingly, this magnitude has been increasing by roughly 1 degree every single decade. The strongest surface heat concentrations were definitively linked to Dubai's dense, highly built areas. This is the hidden cost of rapid, dense urbanization in a hostile climate. The urban geometry traps the heat. The narrow corridors between skyscrapers block the natural wind that might carry the heat away. The building materials themselves act as massive thermal batteries, slowly discharging the brutal afternoon energy back into the nighttime air. If the human body traditionally survives an extreme daytime environment by waiting for the relief of night, what happens when the night stops providing that relief? When exactly is this city supposed to cool down? What if sunset no longer means an escape from the heat, but merely a darker version of the exact same thermal assault? This constant, unrelenting exposure eliminates the biological recovery period. A city that cannot cool itself forces the human heart and kidneys to fight for much longer periods. It places permanent stress on every biological function, and in a battle of endurance between millions of tons of engineered concrete and the fragile human cardiovascular system, the human body is always going to be the weaker machine. First, your heart accelerates. It is desperately trying to pump blood away from your vital organs and push it toward your skin to release heat. Sweat pours out, stripping your body of essential water and salt. Your muscles begin to weaken. Your judgment becomes cloudy and unreliable. Then, the single organ you rely on to recognize this extreme danger begins overheating: the brain. We must stop treating extreme heat as a mere inconvenience. It is a biological dismantling. Confusion is not merely another symptom on a medical checklist. Confusion is the exact moment the body begins losing the cognitive ability to save itself. You stop seeking shade. You stop asking for water. This brings us back to the most terrifying number of all. At approximately 40 degrees inside the human core, this is no longer discomfort. It is a catastrophic medical emergency. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention warns that during severe heat stroke, the temperature inside the body can surge beyond 41 degrees in only 10 to 15 minutes. Think about what that timeline actually means for someone walking through a sun-exposed outdoor plaza in downtown Dubai. 10 to 15 minutes. That is the time it takes to walk from a hotel lobby to a distant metro station. That is the time it takes to search for a taxi in a sprawling, unshaded parking lot. Once the cascade of heat stroke begins, the symptoms escalate violently: altered mental states, muffled speech, total loss of muscular coordination, seizures, and eventually, unconsciousness. Delayed medical treatment at this stage does not just mean a long recovery. It frequently results in permanent neurological disability or death. How do you escape when your brain is becoming too hot to understand that you need to leave the area? How do you clearly ask for help after the heat has already dismantled your ability to form coherent sentences? What does a luxury skyline, a record-breaking observation deck, or a premium retail boulevard mean to a human body whose internal organs are literally beginning to cook? Dubai claims to have mastered one of the harshest physical climates on Earth. It markets itself as a miracle of modern engineering and resilience, but when you look closely at how the city actually operates during the brutal summer months, the solution to the heat is shockingly primitive. Their ultimate strategy for defeating the environment is simply this: do not remain outside. This is the city that supposedly conquered the desert environment. This is the global hub of luxury tourism that promises endless leisure and seamless comfort. So why does the reality of summer life involve moving frantically from one refrigerated box to another? You wake up in an air-conditioned apartment. You walk into an air-conditioned elevator lobby. You step into an air-conditioned car. You drive to an air-conditioned office building. And in the evening, you seek entertainment inside an air-conditioned shopping mall. Apparently, defeating the desert simply means avoiding all direct physical contact with it. Dubai did not remove the extreme heat. It merely placed the entire population inside a giant refrigerator and then built that refrigerator directly inside the furnace. This reveals a massive, structural vulnerability in the city's economic foundation, particularly its heavy reliance on international tourism. Tourism requires movement. It requires spontaneous spending. It requires visitors wandering through districts, sitting at outdoor cafes, and engaging with the physical environment. But you cannot wander when the pavement surface is radiating 60 degrees. Therefore, the outdoor economy effectively dies for months at a time. Tourists arrive expecting a vibrant global city, but what they actually experience is a network of disconnected indoor shopping centers. They are trapped. The city becomes a highly decorated indoor space, wearing an outdoor costume. Retailers who depend on foot traffic outside the megamalls suffer. The hospitality sector faces immense pressure because they must constantly provide vast, cooled indoor spaces just to keep their guests from feeling trapped. Why construct one of the world's most spectacular and expensive outdoor skylines if ordinary human life must observe it exclusively from behind thick, insulated glass? Is downtown Dubai truly a functional urban space, or is it merely an architectural exhibition that you can only safely view from the inside? The financial cost of maintaining this illusion is staggering. The city must pump massive amounts of artificial cooling into these isolated indoor zones to sustain the tourism model. And the data proves exactly how much pressure this puts on the infrastructure. In the year 2025, the Dubai Electricity and Water Authority reported that the city's annual peak electricity demand rose by 5.83%, reaching a massive record of 11.39 gigawatts. That immense growth in power consumption cannot be blamed on air conditioning alone. Population growth, new real estate construction, and general economic activity all drive electricity demand. But it clearly reveals the sheer, terrifying scale of the utility machine required to support a city that continues to aggressively expand inside an environment of extreme heat. And every machine that becomes completely essential for human survival eventually develops the exact same terrifying weakness. It is no longer allowed to stop. Consider a sealed glass residential or commercial tower during the absolute hottest hours of a summer afternoon. Its windows are permanently bolted shut. The outdoor air offers absolutely zero relief. The only usable, survivable climate exists exclusively inside the building, and that climate is entirely manufactured by electricity. Remove that artificial cooling, not forever, not for a week. Remove it just long enough for the massive amount of solar heat stored in the building's exterior to begin radiating inward. The temperature inside a sealed glass box rises exponentially. The tower does not need to physically collapse. Its foundation can remain perfectly intact. Its interior simply needs to stop being habitable. Heat alone is dangerous enough, but heat combined with extreme humidity is significantly worse because the heavy moisture in the air physically blocks sweat from evaporating off human skin. For many years, a wet bulb temperature of 35 degrees was widely repeated as the absolute theoretical edge of human survival. Wet bulb temperature is a measurement that combines both heat and humidity to reflect what the body actually feels. But recent scientific evidence is far more alarming. A highly respected study, published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, validated evidence suggesting that humans may completely lose the ability to safely regulate core body heat at wet bulb temperatures between roughly 26 and 31 degrees, depending heavily on the specific environmental combinations. This does not mean people instantly perish the moment the air reaches that threshold. What it actually means is that beyond those specific combinations, a healthy human body may no longer be able to maintain a stable core temperature during continued exposure. The body begins accumulating heat faster than it can expel it. So what happens when the climate outside becomes entirely incompatible with basic human biology, and the safe climate inside depends completely on a mechanical system? Is endless air conditioning still just a luxury convenience when ordinary life cannot continue without it? When exactly does cooling stop being a premium comfort and cross the line into becoming critical life support infrastructure? The entire economic model of Dubai, its real estate market, its aviation hub, its hotel industry, assumes that the indoor spaces will always remain perfectly chilled. The margin for error is effectively zero. A city cannot market itself as a premium global destination if its basic habitability relies on a mechanical system that is constantly being pushed to its absolute limits. Dubai's answer to this escalating threat is simply to expand the machine. But expanding the city also expands the engineered surfaces that trap the heat in the first place. The city is hot, so it needs more artificial cooling. The widespread availability of cooling supports the construction of more buildings. More buildings create an ever-expanding grid of engineered surfaces, asphalt roads, and reflective glass facades. Those new engineered surfaces absorb vast amounts of solar energy during the day. The expanded city retains far more heat at night. The surrounding environment becomes even hotter, so the city needs even more artificial cooling. This is not a victory over the desert environment. This is a catastrophic thermal feedback loop dressed up with a luxury lobby. Remember the satellite evidence regarding the urban heat island effect. The absolute strongest surface heat island concentrations have been directly associated with Dubai's dense, highly built commercial and residential areas. Urbanization completely replaced parts of the natural desert terrain with engineered surfaces and heavy infrastructure. Dubai is not simply standing inside the extreme heat. Massive parts of the city are actively helping to generate and store it. Every new mega project, every new sprawling retail district, every new master-planned community adds more thermal mass to the environment. Furthermore, the millions of air conditioning compressor units required to keep the interiors cool must vent their waste heat somewhere. They dump that exhaust heat directly into the outdoor streets, raising the outside temperature even further, which in turn forces the air conditioning systems to work harder and consume more electricity. How many massive district cooling plants does it take to finally prove that you have conquered the climate? At what specific point does a towering glass skyscraper stop being a proud symbol of economic victory and become a fragile container that cannot function for a single day without industrial-scale refrigeration? Is Dubai actually cooling the city, or is it continuously paying an ever-increasing financial and environmental price to remove heat from a city it just keeps making larger and denser? This feedback loop creates an enormous hidden economic vulnerability. The cost of running this massive cooling infrastructure eats into corporate profits, drives up the cost of living for residents, and makes the entire real estate market dependent on artificially subsidized energy. The marketing brochures promise a futuristic paradise, but the thermodynamic reality reveals a fragile system engaged in a perpetual, exhausting war against the atmosphere. And this is exactly how Dubai collapses, not when the majestic towers fall into the sand, but when the vital space between them completely stops functioning as a city. Dubai does not need to physically disappear beneath the sweeping desert sand to experience a collapse. The towers can remain perfectly vertical, the reflective glass can remain intact, the streetlights can remain powered on, The massive shopping malls can remain fully stocked with luxury goods. But a city is not defined only by its buildings. A functional urban city is also defined by the shared space between those buildings. The collapse of Dubai is a domino sequence of environmental and biological failures. The air becomes dangerously hot. High humidity critically weakens the body's ability to use evaporation. The blinding sun increases radiant exposure. The dark pavement throws stored thermal energy upward. Dense concrete construction aggressively retains that heat long after sunset. The human body completely loses its necessary nighttime recovery period. Outdoor activity is brutally forced to retreat into shorter and shorter seasonal windows. Ordinary social and economic life moves permanently behind sealed glass. The massive demand for mechanical cooling grows exponentially, and every usable interior space becomes entirely dependent on a complex utility machine that cannot ever be allowed to stop. We must look at the regional scientific warnings. Advanced climate modeling published in Nature Climate Change has explicitly projected that, under a high-emissions scenario, extreme wet bulb temperatures around the Arabian Gulf could approach or even exceed critical human adaptability thresholds later this century. This is not a sensational prediction that downtown Dubai becomes instantly uninhabitable on one specific date in the near future. It is a severe, scientifically grounded warning about the undeniable direction of travel. It is a warning about systemic vulnerability. Dubai always imagined its own collapse as a dramatic event where a tower physically falls. But extreme heat creates a much quieter, far more insidious collapse. The pavement remains, but fewer and fewer people can actually use it. The grand outdoor plaza remains, but the brutal summer completely empties it of human life. The spectacular skyline remains, but it is increasingly experienced only from behind refrigerated, heavily tinted glass. The outdoor city still exists on the map. It simply stops functioning for the human body. Dubai desperately tried to construct an artificial paradise above the harsh desert. Instead, it may be building a highly engineered heat hell that survives only while the electrical machines continue running. The desert does not need to mount a violent attack to destroy Dubai. By covering the sand with heat-trapping concrete, glass, and asphalt, Dubai is actively helping the desert finish the job. The illusion of total control is cracking. You cannot build endless glass towers in one of the most hostile climates on the planet without eventually facing the thermodynamic consequences. We have been conditioned to view Dubai as a miracle of wealth and real estate. But beneath the luxury branding, it is a city engaged in an unwinnable arms race against its own environment. Record-breaking tourism numbers and towering architectural achievements mean very little if the basic act of walking down the street becomes a biological hazard. The real vulnerability of Dubai is not just economic. It is the inescapable reality that a city designed to ignore the environment is slowly being consumed by it. If you value documentaries that look beyond the skyline and investigate the hidden mechanisms driving our modern world, subscribe to the channel. The next systemic warning sign is rarely where the official brochure tells you to look. This documentary is an independent analytical assessment based on publicly available scientific data, climate modeling, and economic reports up to the current period. The environmental, economic, and geopolitical conditions discussed are subject to ongoing change. This video examines structural, climatic, and urban planning systems. It is not intended to disparage any residents, demographics, or specific organizations within the region. The content provided does not constitute financial, investment, or personal travel advice. Certain conclusions drawn regarding future regional habitability and systemic risks are analytical projections based on cited institutional research and historical trends.